So we have an extra special episode of the Alchemy of Politics. Again, I'm your host, Rusha Modi, a physician here in Los Angeles. And as always, the premise of this show is to talk to the smartest, most creative people solving society's most wicked problems. And today we have Akash Vagala, a friend, colleague, mentor, and coach, and now vegan bodybuilding superstar, co-founder and creator of RNT Fitness, which is a fantastic platform that we will link in the show notes. I encourage all of you to join and learn about, that helps motivated top performers become really masters of their own physical and mental health. It's really a holistic transformation program. It's not purely just training alone. As you say, the physical is the vehicle for a larger gain. So Akash, thank you for being on the show today. Appreciate that.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to get started with fitness and COVID. In the last couple of years, there's been a sort of a sea change in how individuals train and work out. And obviously, 2 years ago, this sort of unprecedented event occurred that led to a lot of lockdowns. And so a lot of individuals, and myself included, were kind of struggling to figure out how are we going to train. And I think that's led to a dramatic change in perspectives about training. And I know one of the comments that you made, I think, about sort of social policies in a lot of countries, especially in the UK and America, is how fitness and nutrition were not emphasized enough by medical and governing bodies, and that some of the lockdowns may have been counterproductive. I wanted to see if you could kind of elaborate on that message. What should have the message been all this time regarding how people are not able to sort of incorporate nutrition and fitness to protecting themselves?
Well, I think if we look at the people that are most susceptible to COVID, one of the biggest links to it was obesity, if I'm not mistaken, and those with pre-existing heart conditions or medical conditions just related to the heart. And if we look at the top causes of death or mobility in the world, it's all linked to sedentary behavior, poor lifestyle management, smoking, obesity, metabolic syndrome. And we look at COVID specifically, the links between being overweight and out of shape to your susceptibility of catching it was super. It was very, very strong. And not to say that you can't catch it if you're fit, because I caught it a couple of months ago. You can still catch it, but the rate of death was a lot higher with those who are obese. And I think the way I'm going to speak in the UK, and I think we're obviously very similar in our thoughts in the US as well. But I think when you shut gyms down, you send a message that exercise, and not to say that you can't exercise outside the gym, but if there's a full-on lockdown and you shut the gyms down, I think you send a very strong message that it's not a priority for policy. And I think where the government got it wrong in the UK, I can speak for the UK, is they forget that the gym for many people is a sanctuary for not just physical health, but mental health as well. And I think we're yet to see the impact of COVID long-term from a mental health perspective. I think the reality of it is probably kicking in a bit more now, and it will continue to do so in the next few years. In the past few weeks, I've actually heard of suicide rates going up. I've never known anyone to commit suicide, but in the last few weeks, I've heard of 3 people personally who've committed suicide. And not to say this is all linked to lockdowns, but I think there's a mental health lag that we've yet to see. And I think if we just tie this back to the message around gyms, I was very vocal about my thoughts around gyms being shut down, because I thought gym is a mental sanctuary for many people, but also it's encouraging good, healthy behavior. And if you chose to go to the gym and you were okay with the potential risk of catching it, let that be on that person there. And if you're young and healthy for the most part, I think the message to stay at home wasn't the right thing to do. And I think shutting the gyms down said a strong message there. When I think in reality, what we should have done as a government is double down on nutrition, double down on exercise, double down on healthy practices. And I think what they did do when it came to these policies just wasn't what I thought could have been the proposed solution. But I don't want to get too much into politics, even though we're on the podcast called the Alchemy of Politics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is definitely a fine line that needs to be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to ride that fine line when I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that the challenge was early on, we didn't really know enough about the disease,
Hmm.
right? When it hit, at least in the United States, kind of in March or April of 2020, I think we had this sort of exponentially growing pathogen. I think it only became later, at least on the data, probably a number of months later, that there was this clear link between obesity being a leading risk factor along with age, among other things, in terms of outcomes, hard outcomes like death, hospitalization, etc. I mean, I think the governing logic that I agreed with, though, however, is yes, it's on individuals if they want to make certain health choices, but when we had concern that there is asymptomatic spread,
Yeah, yeah,
then that becomes a concern.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, my knowledge and expertise is limited to those sorts of areas. I think for me, it was more the overall message
Yeah.
of like, do we need to lock down the whole place?
Yeah.
I just didn't think that was necessary. If we look at, we're ultimately now we're moving to a society where we're just learning to live with it, aren't we? Like I saw a stat the other day where 1 in 13 in the UK have COVID, but we don't have a lockdown and we're just getting on with it as normal. And obviously now we have vaccinations in place, and there's a lot more precautions and understanding of what's going on. But I think we're moving to a society where we're just learning to live with it. And I guess you can never test it, but I wonder what would that approach have worked earlier on, when it did really hit us as a society.
Well, I mean, I think that we have Sweden in particular and some other sort of
Yeah,
Central European states that had a sort of a laxer approach, and they didn't do as well. But I also think that some of the major practices that, like the UK and the US did also weren't super effective. I mean, there was a sort of a recent press incident in the PR room, in the press room of the White House, actually, with Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, and someone kind of pressed her on this very issue. Like, it seems like the United States didn't emphasize patient well-being, personal well-being, and fitness and nutrition enough. And for some reason, she was kind of reluctant to sort of admit that, yeah, actually, we were kind of, you know, less in terms of our priority stance on those issues. And so I thought that the thing that was troublesome of that was, okay, now that we know in retrospect that clearly there should have been some shifts in messaging, why not admit that? Why not be open about that? But I think that for some reason there was a reluctance there, and that was not cool with me. I mean, we have to be able to be agile in our thinking about something as critical as our health. So I think that there was definitely an opportunity later in the pandemic to be able to keep people safe, but allow them, as you say, to engage in their sanctuary. One of the other changes of COVID is how people work out. I mean, you're a fitness trainer, business leader, entrepreneur. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see this being probably one of the largest shifts in just how people consume fitness information and train and eat, probably in
yeah,
recent memory, correct?
yeah. I mean, it's accelerated the industry, I'd say 10, 15 years. We're always going down the online route where there's going to be more digital health practices, more online options and preferences. But I think COVID just fast forwarded everything very, very quickly in the industry. Luckily, we were already positioned online, which was very useful. So it didn't really change the way we approach things. All we had to do was cater for the fact that people now train at home more regularly. Before, it was very much you get the odd person who has a home gym, but everyone else is loves going to the gym or trains in a place that they enjoy going to. Whereas now people there's the option of training at home, which is a lot more uh, ideal for some people. And I think there's more equipment that supports it that potentially before you had to think you needed a massive garage in order to support a home gym, whereas now people have realized that you can do things with very minimal stuff, whether that's simply an adjustable set of dumbbells or whether it's something as high tech as I don't know, tonal or whatever the different
Right.
gadgets there are out there, or Peloton, and these things have exponentially grew. But I also think what we're seeing in recent months is, yes, it's accelerated the online space from a support accountability service perspective, but from a behavioral perspective of going to the gym, I think that's on the comeback. And you're seeing now, I think Peloton's the best example of, they grew rapidly and they were expecting to continue to grow rapidly. And then I think what they've realized is, it hasn't worked out that way, and they've had to kind of scrap plans, and they've kind of declined quite significantly because people have realized that they love going to that third place and they love going to that second home for them, which for many people is a gym, is a box, is a studio. And I, for myself, like I worked out at home because I had to work out at home, and for me, I needed that exercise release, and I've never stopped training. But as soon as the gyms were open, I was back in there straight away. And I think you can't replace that feeling of separation you get from training in a gym or training somewhere else, that I think it's very hard to replicate at home unless you have the room for it, or potentially that's just the way it works for you. But for the average person who doesn't have the room, it's that second place and a place to go to that I think is coming back in full circle. And I've noticed in the online space, being an owner of an online company, the biggest thing we hear now is, but I want to work with a personal trainer. And the resurgence of that has come quite rapidly in the last 3, 6, 9 months that I didn't hear potentially 1 or 2 years ago. So that's something very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues to advance as we go through the years, because people still want that human interaction, and people still perceive the fitness industry as a personal trainer and their client in the gym. That's still the perception of what a fitness industry is.
Yeah.
So as much as we've accelerated quickly within the industry as a society, I think they saw online as like a potential solution for those who weren't that serious about their training. But now they're still in that battle of like, is it personal training, or is it you can do this online? Oh, I didn't realize you can do it online. So there's still that. Yeah, it depends on what sort of niche and what sort of circles you're within.
So I mean, I think I'm glad that you sort of bring up Peloton, because that was sort of my pet interest during the last 2 years, is sort of looking at that company as sort of, is it a harbinger of sort of dramatic future possibilities in how people train, live, consume sort of health entertainment, if you will, or is that sort of is it an example, or is it a warning? And it seems like initially it was this paragon of the future of fitness, right? I mean, their stock went through the roof. Everybody got a Peloton. We eventually got one, although it wasn't during the pandemic in our household. And then now, as you pointed out, they got obliterated by a private investment firm that was analyzing their stock performance and management, and they're scaling back their efforts, including a strength training device. So I guess the question I have is, you said that the pandemic has accelerated, across 10 and 20 years, what has happened in the last couple of years, how consumers are training. What is the future of fitness? Is it going to be some sort of hybrid model where there's in-person training with the trainer, or in a sort of a standard box gym, along with some virtual online component? Will it all be connected? Are we all going to be using biometric devices, advanced Apple Watches to sort of track various things? Or do you think it's going to return completely old school and find that, as you kind of point out, the old ways work the best?
I don't think I'll ever go back to the old way. I think every gym and every personal trainer will have an online element to their approach. Like my local gym, for example, has now launched an online app, and online tracking systems. And I think all gyms will become more and more digital. They'll have more digital tools. I think also with personal training in person, the cream will always rise to the top. There'll always be a place for exclusive, high-end, premium personal training. I think where the struggle maybe was for the sort of the average box gym, or the average box personal trainer who doesn't really want to offer a premium service. And I think the same applies to online. I think online we've had a massive insurgence of quote unquote online fitness coaches who've opened an Instagram account and now call themselves coaches.
Yeah.
I think we had a massive influx of that, and that will become the wheat. The wheat will always separate itself from the chaff, and the cream will rise to the top. And I think we're going through a maturation cycle in the industry where there'll be a rapid separation of this. And I also think in the next 5 to 10 years, regulation will come in, accountability will come in, because right now it's a very much a cowboy field, especially online. Online is unregulated completely. You could tomorrow start selling nutrition and diet plans and training plans, and no one's going to question you. It's a very unregulated industry with no real accountability. You can't do that in law. You can't do that in medicine, right? You're a doctor. You can't just randomly call yourself a doctor, right? And if you think about what we're doing in the fitness industry, we're actually probably getting more contact for people's health and fitness than any doctors do. When we're in a privileged position where we can actually help, and you probably can attest to this, is we can probably help patients in a more hands-on approach than most doctors can, because doctors just don't have the bandwidth or the time that they really want, right? You'd pay to have more time with your patients, right? But it's very difficult, especially in the UK and NHS, where it's sort of one in, one out. It's very as fast as you can. I don't know what the equivalent exactly is for you guys, but I'm sure there is. Having heard a lot of the things that you went through during COVID, where it went mental, right? So I think there's going to be regulation, and I think at the same time there'll also be huge advancements in biotech, in bio tracking, and there'll be all these cool gadgets, which I think sometimes can cause paralysis by analysis and overthinking for the most part. I don't really think you need it, a lot of it. But I think as technology advances, there's always going to be more things that people want to track. And, from that, there may be more proactive health solutions. I think it'll tie in very well to the medical industry in giving people more proactive ability to see what's going on with their health, what's going on with their fitness, to hopefully allow them to take more responsibility in advance. That being said, I think as much as fitness improves as an industry, the obesity crisis is going at a faster rate. And it'll be, if you look at the two curves, I often say to colleagues, I'm like, dude, we don't have competition here. There's plenty of people who are going to be obese. And in 2030, 2040, 2050, the stats are insane. The amount of the billions of people that are going to become obese that are not already. The fitness industry is needed more than ever. But I think as much as we're advancing as a fitness industry, the society as a whole is probably valuing health less than ever. Otherwise, we'd probably see a decrease in obesity, but it's the other way around, which is crazy because sometimes we feel like we're in a circle where everyone's into fitness. But the reality is we're still a small population. We're still a small minority. Most people don't care at all. And in America, you only need to go walk around to see the obesity crisis in full effect. When I come outside of London, London is I wouldn't say it's a health conscious city, but it's like LA, right? Nothing like LA. LA is another level, right? LA, everyone's in shape. But
you're gonna have to elaborate on that in a second. So,
when I went to LA, when I went to a few hikes in LA, I remember just thinking, why is everyone in amazing shape here? You never get that in London, but you go outside of London and any metropolitan city, people are a little bit more conscious in those cities. You go outside of it, and it's just insane. Like the eating habits and the what's considered normal.
Yeah.
So I think as much as we're advancing very rapidly in the fitness industry, what we really need to dig into is behavioral psychology, is understanding why people are becoming overweight in the first place. It's looking at potential taxes. It's looking at education systems in schools to help people prepare for better education with regards to nutrition and exercise, because I think there's more root cause problems here than what the fitness industry can do. Because that's why the fitness industry is very much a quick fix culture, because it's sort of like creating short-term solutions for many people, which are deep-rooted psychological concerns. And a colleague of mine said to me earlier today, he was telling a few of our members, your relationship with your emotions will dictate your relationship with food.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reality is, it is exactly that, isn't it? It's exactly that. And we've got to go a little bit deeper as a fitness industry as a whole, but also society as a whole, to really solve this growing crisis that we've got.
I mean, I can't agree more that it's going to be sort of almost a redesign of society. There's going to be fitness, urban policy, how our cities are designed, behavioral psychology, emotional regulation. I think that just a biomedical approach is going to be insufficient, as it already has been. And as you pointed out, we have sort of this kind of lens of simplistic solutions. And at least in America, there's a couple things going on that we'll hit on. One is sort of this demonification or villanification of certain food groups. well, okay, it's just the carbs, that's the reason, we're having this massive spike in metabolic diseases. No, it's actually, and you kind of are into this because you've been on both sides of it. You've now gone plant-based for your recent shred, but before you certainly were. And I think that, yeah, it's a multifactorial approach. I wanted to sort of quote something that you just mentioned, which is about sort of emotional regulation. And this is actually from an article that we will link that quoted a fitness entrepreneur and trainer, Helaine Knapp, who started City Row. And the article sort of says the following. Our new relationship to fitness might reflect the fact that we've gained a generalized sense of mortality. Quote, we are all realizing that we're going to be moving every day for the rest of our lives, so we better be careful with our one body and not pound the pavement with high intensity workouts 7 times per week, unquote. Her argument was basically COVID accelerated a shift where, because of the mental health and emotional challenges, a lot of fitness platforms, gyms, trainers, what have you, are shifting from sort of the pain is gain culture of training that was epitomized with like CrossFit to more regenerative workouts, emphasizing more recovery based training modalities, incorporating meditation, yoga, de-stressing, things that activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And that a lot of this is based on, people who aren't in healthcare or fitness like us, especially me, realizing of acute mortality. I mean, I think most people don't come across, unfortunately, the finitude of human lifespan in a day-to-day basis as healthcare professionals do, and was sort of a dramatic wake up. So she's arguing that's going to be the biggest shift in training, actually, for at least the foreseeable future. Do you see that in kind of your experience?
Think if you think about what we do at RNC, it's you mentioned it earlier. It's the physical is the vehicle, and it's more than just the physical. If it was just literally macros and weight and doing more activity, we would have solved this years ago. But it's way more than that, and it needs to be we need a holistic approach. There's I talk about the 5 pillars of health. Is that you've got the physical at the bottom, and it's the vehicle to then work on your emotional, your mental, your social, and your spiritual health. You need a whole well-rounded approach because the body is a representation of the mind. When people lose control of their body, it's not because they've fallen off the diet. It's because their mind, there's things going on in their mind. They've lost control, emotional control. There's muck underlying. There's a job they're not satisfied with. There's a relationship they're not satisfied with that they've not taken action on. There's other factors in life that they don't learn how to deal with, so they take it out on their bodies, and they take it out on food or sedentary behavior or alcohol or whatever the crutch may be. And I think we need to have a more well-rounded approach where it's not just go out and smash the steps for 6 weeks or 12 weeks, because yeah, anyone can get in shape. The first line of my book is getting in shape is easy. Staying in shape is a whole different ballgame. The reason why the fitness industry is plagued with 6, 8, 12-week plans is because it's easy to lose the weight. It's hard to keep it off. It's hard to really get to the root of it, because when you take away that deadline, when you take away the sexy, shiny object, you've got to learn how to deal with your own relationship with food, your own relationship with how you deal with your emotions. And it can be a scary place for a lot of people to be. We talk, we've worked together on this a lot around trying to uncover the muck and trying to uncover what's holding you back. And I don't know how transparent you want to be on the podcast, but we've kind of identified a lot of for you was around your work, right?
Yeah.
Around your purpose, and a lot of frustration was built around your profession and how you had so much angst towards what you were doing and not doing what you wanted to do. That can cause anyone to fall off the quote unquote wagon. But it's not. But that's not me saying to you, yeah, do more steps, or yeah, just eat it less, is not the answer to it. The answer is let's solve the root cause, and the root cause is solve the work issue. And I think this is where the approach needs to be, in that we need to blend training, nutrition, and mindset, and take a whole holistic approach to the problem in order to make a real dent in this.
So I think we have. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I've definitely talked about sort of physician burnout and struggling to do the kind of work that got us into this field in the current setup, being a huge part of like sort of my interest to kind of get healthier and the major stumbling block, as it has been for a lot of physicians. But I think you just pointed out a paradox or a challenge that the health and fitness industry have that I was wondering if you could provide some insight on. Because on one hand, you sort of argued we need a holistic deep dive in like the psychology, mindset, and emotional states that underlie why someone does or does not stay
Yeah,
engaged in fitness behaviors, which requires in-depth knowledge, high touch, deep connection. On the other hand, we have now a social phenomenon that is escalating where metabolic, obesity, and nutrition related health issues are dramatically spreading. So, how do you scale a solution to solve both of those issues when, by
yeah,
definition, the more individual focused you are,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to be harder to get a social effect? And the more socially oriented your paradigm is, by definition, people have sort of less individual connection to that.
I think it's a fantastic question, and I think it's the ultimate question for any entrepreneur in this industry because yes, there is a need for behavioral psychology, but like I said, the physical is the vehicle in that you have to. Yes, you can work on your mind all day long, but you still gotta prove to your body and your mind that you're going to do something about it, and that's why you need both approach. And to answer your question is, if we had the answer, we would have cracked it, but there is that element of how do we scale something which needs some level of high touch. I don't think it needs extremely individualized one-to-one elements. There needs to be a high touch element, so it needs a human element, but it also needs a community shift. And ultimately, this is the $1 million, this is the $1 trillion question, right? How do
Yeah.
we scale that? And it can be scaled, but it just needs incredible amount of resources to do so. Because you got small micro companies like myself who are doing it to an extent, but we've only helped 3,000 people in the last 5 years, and that's not even a little speck in the grand scheme of things, right? And if you look at some of the biggest companies in fitness, even they're not even touching the surface of what needs to be done. What needs to be done is really rooted in government policy, like you said, urban policy. That's where the scale is. But when you see, again, I'll use the NHS as an example. In I think September 2020, they came out with something called like the soup diet. That was their answer to helping obesity. It's like, all right, we're gonna put everyone on 800-calorie soup diets. And you just
Oh, really?
think,
I wasn't aware of
yeah,
this.
yeah, something like the super shake diet or something like that. And you just think that's the answer. And then and they were just coming out with all these crazy things around that
Yeah.
time, just trying to show that they were doing something about obesity. Yeah, it's all forgotten. And when I speak to people who work in government and government health, it's all just red tape bureaucracy. There's
Yeah.
no real like drive to want to change things because there's a lot of money in all of this as well. In the other side of it, right? There's so much money involved, and I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and what's happening behind the scenes, but that's the only way to scale it really, because that's where the resources and that's where the attention lies. Uh, if a different approach was taken at every layer of society, then of course, yeah, we can solve this problem. But until that, then we've got to rely on entrepreneurs like ourselves to make small dents in small areas of the world. And this is why I say, our big vision, our NC, is to see a world transform one life-changing journey at a time, because we can only help one person at a time who can help their friend, who can help their family, who can help their community and society have these conversations. And slowly we can get there. But for widespread change that you're asking about and how you scale it rapidly, it's going to require like deep root government shifts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I 100% agree. I think to kind of get into one sort of nuanced version of that, earlier in the talk, you said, why not leave it to individuals alone to go to the gym and kind of do their thing as long as they're being healthy and they're young and not at risk of COVID. So I think I 100% agree with you. I think the bureaucratic infrastructure has lost touch with who they're trying to serve, which is, in your case, the British population. And when you're divorced from the people you're trying to serve, you end up fulfilling your own needs. And that's where the bureaucracy comes in. What would you say to someone, however, that says, you know what, you're absolutely right, Akash. It should be on individuals to do their own thing when it comes to training and really, we don't need the government acting as your second mother, telling you to eat right and eat your vegetables and do all that. Like some people really feel that it's government overreach to really be regulating or encouraging or having policies that allow people to train or encourage them to train or whatever. I mean, I recall Mike Bloomberg was the former mayor of New York here in the United States, and a few years back, and he had a soda tax. He actually had a local municipal tax that he tried to pass on huge cups of soda that people drank because he was like, look, this is a leading cause of empty calories. And he was sort of blasted for politicians overreaching, trying to sort of control human behavior. So do you think that there's any truth to that? Where do you strike that balance?
I mean, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be done, to be honest. Like, even if you think about a different problem in the world is, a problem, another problem in the world is climate change, right?
Yeah.
And we think about what the Earth looks like in 100 years' time. And if we carry on the behaviors that we're carrying on, there's probably not going to be much of an Earth left.
Yeah.
Which is what's driving a lot of the carbon footprint changes and climate change regulation. But if we take that problem in itself, the reason why most people still won't even think about it is because it's too big of a problem to even conceptualize,
Yeah.
and it's too far in the future to even worry about. We're not even going to be here in 100 years' time, so why does it matter? It's that sort of mentality
Yeah.
of, let's just focus on our day's problems today, and let's focus on my problems. And if we think about for obesity, yes, I think there needs to be hard regulatory changes, and maybe that will impact someone's behavior. But I think you've got to get it young. You got to catch people young in this, and that's where I think the government can make the most impact, rather than relying on taxing soda. There's always other things you can tax, right?
Yeah.
There's always other things you can eat. So we got to educate the younger populations, really, because it's gonna be difficult. And if you think about societal economical status in this as well, it's a well-known fact, and I'm assuming it's the same in the US. In poorer areas, the access to cheap junk food is a lot higher. There's more fried chicken shops in underdeveloped areas. That doesn't help this whole problem that we have, right? And you go to more bougie, wealthy areas, and you're going to see more, green cafes and organic this and healthy that. Whereas for the majority of the population, the reality is it's just version of chicken shops and cheap pizza. So that's why I think it's more than just one layer to this. And even if we just look at the climate change example, you probably know about the climate change problem, right? But it's probably such a big thing that you don't think about it every day. And what you can do for the climate, as an example, could be eating less meat, or being more plant-based. But for many people, that doesn't resonate enough because it's too big of a thing. And if you're not obese and you're not even a little bit overweight, why even bother?
Yeah.
Why fight for this cause? So I think that's a big part of it as well.
I mean, I think what you highlighted is sort of fantastic and really critical, which is tying individual behavior to larger social consequences. And unless that link is made very clear and explicit and personally relevant for someone, they're not going to move on that problem. And I think climate change, as you just said, it's this foreboding thing on the horizon, but it's not here now. I have a legitimate number of issues to deal with as
Well, and bills to pay.
exactly.
Don't need to worry about the trees.
Yeah.
And you think about obesity. I know people that are 150 kilos that don't care. Because why? Because nothing's happened to them yet.
I know. Yeah.
And they're a walking heart attack. They're a walking issue anytime. Nothing's happened yet. And they probably know. They'll tell me, oh yeah, Akash, you're gonna be on it soon, and you're gonna be more disciplined soon. But they'll still go and have the 7-course meal every night and all these things. And they'll get heavier and heavier because nothing's happened yet. And until something happens to an individual, even that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Someone has a heart attack because they're obese, and they still don't want to do anything about it. What can you do?
Believe me,
Ultimately, it's a responsibility, right? We've got to have our own
yeah,
responsibility. It's like, what can you do?
it is a struggle sometimes to communicate, you know, to patients I've interacted with as well as other individuals in society that message. I mean, I think the human ability to deny reality and to protect yourself from emotional pain, even at the expense of your physical health, is ability almost unbounded. I think that, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I think for COVID in the last 2 years is really the first time a lot of people on this planet, especially in the West, especially in at least initially richer areas, had to overtly address the fact every day, wow, we're all human, we're all mortal, we all get sick, right? And it's on the news, it's in our face, we have to deal with our own health, the vitality of the person next to us. Most people don't really have to think about that, or they allow themselves the opportunity to ignore those issues because it's easier, as you pointed out. So I think that the world is grappling with, for a lot of us, the mask has been taken off, and people are struggling now with the mental health side of it. And I think that's where programs like R&T can really help. Which is, you're right. If you just told someone, look, you have to do 20,000 things right now to kind of get everything on track, it would be too much. But if you can create a structured program that eases someone into that and shows them the value of something different, then I think it becomes not just an escape from reality, but also sort of a future possibility that people are looking forward to. But people don't conceptualize health that way. They just think about the fun food they can't eat, and they don't link it to larger issues like climate change, destruction of the planet, let alone their own health.
And let alone generational health.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want to kind of wrap this with something that you've done kind of interestingly as you are going towards your photo shoot, is that you went vegan. I know you've gotten a lot of questions about this. I guess one question is, why do a photo shoot as opposed to just trying this plant-based eating out for a couple of months? Because you're already in obviously elite shape. I mean, you're
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
I kind of joke that you're sort of the walking bodies exhibit. The bodies exhibit. I don't know if you had it in the UK, but it's sort of like dissected human cadavers that were available in a museum setting where you could see underneath the skin. And I mean, we see every sinew on your body, every leg. I mean, you have like no
you
body
talk about
fat.
that picture, yeah,
Yeah, you
that
are like
Instagram
a
picture, yeah.
walking
I
representation
am
of that.
right now, yeah.
But why do a photo shoot? Why get this lean?
Yeah,
Why not just stay at 10% body fat, really rip lifting whatever
yeah.
your RDL weight is on a vegan diet? What do you have to prove? What are you trying to show the world that about this level of fitness that you couldn't do when you were maybe a little bit higher in body fat but still quite lean?
Well, the thing is, I stay in good shape year round now, right? I've found my lifestyle solution, and my journey towards being plant-based has been quite gradual over the years. I used to eat a
Yeah.
kilo meat a day, then I went down to sort of one serving a day, and then it was always in the back of my mind, like, I want to stop meat, but I'm scared about losing my fitness goals. I'm scared about, my own fitness gains. And it kind of comes back to what we've been talking about, is that I was thinking selfishly, right? I was thinking, this is my number one priority is fitness. And I didn't want to lose those gains. But, I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take the jump. And for me, going to the extreme was proving to myself first that I could do this and achieve all the fitness ambitions and goals even without it. And if I can get extreme bodybuilding shredded on a vegan diet, then I've got no concerns with any of my fitness goals on a plant-based diet, and I have no concerns with not eating any meat or fish.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, I can also show people who also might be thinking on the same wavelength that they don't need to eat as much meat. They don't need to eat dairy to be fit, jacked, strong, lean, whatever. And it's not to say to everyone, yeah, you should all stop eating meat and fish. It's to say you could probably eat a little bit less and still get your gains.
Yeah.
If you want to stop it all, yeah, you still make gains. The bottom line is, it's nothing to do with whether you're eating meat or not. The bottom line is doing it properly, doing a plant-based diet properly, not just eating junk food and mock meats and things like that. It's doing it properly in an educated way, and remembering that it all comes down to some scientific principles of eating enough protein, which isn't as high as you might think. That's another myth that is
Yeah.
busted out there. And training hard. And those are the two key things, really. And then really your dietary preferences are your dietary preferences. And if you're somewhat inclined to eating less meat, fish, dairy, you can do so and not won't have to worry about compromising your health and fitness priorities. And you can go on that journey and do a little bit for the planet as well. So that's where it came into it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to just get a little bit lean. I may as well go all the way. And there wasn't a bodybuilding show in the UK for naturals in April, so I just settled for a photo shoot. But I'm looking at the bodybuilding calendar for later in the year to potentially mark a return to the stage, see if I can go to the nationals and prove it on an even higher level, because I think it's a message worth pursuing.
How much of social perceptions of what it means to look, perform, and be vegan, including the myths around that, played a role in this transformation for you? Because I know that you're a little bit of you're an outlier in the best sense of the word. You're a unique person, but you're a sort of South Asian gentleman, now plant-based, a bodybuilder, and an entrepreneur. I know when I've talked to some people about plant-based eating, and just for people who are listening, I've been a lifelong plant-based eater. The perceptions of vegans are that they're just skinny, rail thin, weak,
Yeah,
anemic
yeah. Soy
looking.
boys. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just sort of feel like, do you think like social perceptions of what it means to be, and look, I'm in Los Angeles where like image is everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you think you have a message that you're trying to show out there? Like people need to see it in order to
Yeah.
believe it?
I haven't thought as much about it, but I have experienced a lot of the stigma around it of like, uh, um, you know, just be a man and eat meat.
Right.
And I'm like, I used to be the guy that ate the 1 kilo steaks. I've done all that, right? It doesn't make you a man. Being a man has got nothing to do with the food you eat. And I've heard a lot of things around soy boy or you punch like a vegetarian, that famous Arnold line. And so there are a lot of stigmas around vegans being skinny, fat, weak, pathetic. And you know, is there an element of me saying I want to prove that it can be done? I think it's just the overall. First and foremost is I always do these challenges for myself because it gives me a level of self-development and personal growth I personally don't think you can get from anything else. But there is also, the reason my documentary is the first episode is titled "Can you get shredded on a vegan diet?" It's to prove that question wrong.
Yeah.
And it's to prove that you can hold size, you can have a great body, you can get lean, you can look jacked, and you can do it all on a vegan diet. Absolutely. And if that busts all the myths around it at the same time, then fantastic. And if it encourages people to eat a bit more plant-based, that's also fantastic. But I'm not here on an agenda and sort of leaning on the vegan stereotypes, because there is also that element where a lot of people think vegans are just propaganda
Right.
hypes, right? They always associate vegan people as like trying to throw their agenda on other people. And I think that's
Right.
where a lot of vegans go wrong.
Yeah.
They could approach it in a different way rather than just telling everyone what they're doing. Just show. And I think a lot of it is like, for me, it's just like, yeah, cool. Like I'm shredded. I'm in the shape of my life. I've never got this lean, and I've not had any meat or fish.
Yeah.
So if you want to do the same, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people need living, compelling examples to shake them out of their apathy, to get them to care about their own health, care about how their individual behaviors affect the people around them, as well as you pointed out, generations to come. And I think you are definitely that compelling example. So, I mean, I've always been inspired by your work, and I appreciated your coaching, trying to, guide me through sort of my transitions in life, and being health minded as always on that. So I know we're running out of time. I guess one last question, we'll let you go. 20, 30 years from now, 40, 50 years from now, what does the world of nutrition, training, and fitness look like? I have a lot of buddies in the venture capitalistic world. I have a lot of researchers and friends that work on nutrition related health issues. Everyone is fascinated, but a little unsure where the world is decades into the future on that intersection that you sort of live at. What would you have to say as an answer to that if you had to play a sort of a futurist here?
Aside of yeah, It's a really good question, and I think about this a lot. I think, where is the industry going in not 5 years, but in like 50 years?
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be so advanced in our tracking and data. Like, I don't think we can even comprehend what we're going to be able to track. But I think we're still going to face ultimately the same questions of, why are people not adhering? Why are people not living a healthier lifestyle? Because as amazing as health and fitness interventions are going to be, the food interventions and the food changes in the industry are going to be even tastier, even faster, even more enjoyable. And I think the battle is going to be between the two at a level we don't know yet. But who wins at the moment? The obesity crisis is winning, and I think they're going to continue to win for a long time until we see a real shift in the way society views health and fitness. I think something that's going to have to really drastically shift in society to allow the fitness industry to make more of an impact than just simply improving their tech and improving whatever may come with improvements in technology.
I haven't heard that answer ever, that we're kind of in an arms race between, unfortunate innovations in the food industry that are kind of hijacking
Yeah.
our neurochemistry and our ability to sort of respond. We have to win this battle, I
But
think.
look at the convenience sector. Look at Uber. Look at Netflix, and they're effectively our competitors,
Yeah.
because Uber forces people to be less active. Netflix forces people to be more sedentary. Look how they've glued everyone to these things. And then obviously there's the social media element. There's all these other bits, but look at Netflix, look at Uber, look at fast food world. They're innovating like crazy, and they're hooking people more than what fitness is doing.
Yes. Yes.
So we've got to. That is the arms race, so to speak, if you want to put in that analogy. But we've got to win that battle to really make a dent in this. And that's, I guess, is like, how do we gamify it so much that people are hooked to fitness and nutrition, but in a way that they want to be hooked? And it's gonna lie all in like gamification and various technology hacks and psychological hacks that we've almost got to manipulate people into living a healthier lifestyle if it's not forced upon us. So how
Yeah.
do
I
we
mean,
manipulate people? It's like a really like it's a how do we use persuasion in all the neurochemistry, the
yeah.
dopamine, the technology that we have? How do we use it in a good way that beats Netflix, Uber, and whatever's going to be in the next 10, 20 years, probably somewhere in the metaverse, whatever that may be.
Well, I mean, that was something that we'll get to in part two when we have you back on the show, is to talk about the metaverse. But I mean, Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, has said his biggest competitor is sleep.
Yeah,
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 just
yeah,
because he wants people to stay up and watch another
yeah.
20
And how
episodes
well does he do it?
very
He's
well.
That's
So
what I said, right? So, and you spent, yes, people talk about, I don't have time in the evening, but when you audit their day, they're watching a couple hours of Netflix at night.
yeah,
That could be spent walking, that could be spent training, that could be meal prepping, that could be sleeping, all these things that would make them healthier, but the TV is winning.
yeah.
So that's the battle, I think, that we're going to have to figure out in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, because that side is going to get better and better and better as well.
Yeah.
Especially if we think about like some of the stuff that they're doing in the metaverse. I'm not too clear up on it at all, but I watched Mark Zuckerberg's announcement of being called Meta, and he saw that, and I thought, okay, as cool as all that is, that's going to get us out of the real world. It's going to get more people even more sedentary. We're going to have people now not wanting to go outside because they can access everything inside these goggles, or whatever their life is. And I know he showed a bit of exercise stuff, but is it really going to be the same? Is it really going to get people as hooked? And is it going to damage our health more? I don't know. I can only see it happening. So, if that's the technology that we're coming up against next, then, we're going to have to need to be really smart in trying to tackle this crisis.
I agree. I mean, I think one thing that has become clear from my perspective is that there's been a decoupling of productivity vis-a-vis technology versus our health. I mean, productivity as well as wages and other things. But I mean, if you look at the last 30 plus years, our technological innovations have just, hockey sticked upward
Yeah.
exponentially. but our health hasn't. We're now
No.
decoupling our ability to work through laptops and cell phones and the internet.
Yeah.
But mental health, physical health, metabolic health have all stagnated, if not gotten worse. And I think right now we have a market system, a social system that only emphasizes the former. I mean, I feel like it's almost going to take, to what you alluded to earlier, some sort of catastrophic event, that's going to just force all of us to have to sort of do things. And interestingly, I mean, I hope that event, unfortunate as it was, is COVID. I hope for a lot of people listening and people out there, they're like, I'm not really sure. Look at Akash's example. Look at R&T Fitness. I hope the last 2 years have emphasized something that I've always tried to tell my patients that I believe in is, this sort of maxim, a man with his health has 1,000 desires, but a man without his health only has one, right? Your health is the ultimate currency that you have to live the life that you want. You can't take it for granted here. But I hope it doesn't get to the point of a crisis before that message resonates with you, as well as with sort of society. So that's,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I know we're running on time. Where can people learn more about all of your amazing things, as well as your just unreal level of dedication to your photo shoot? How can people connect with you online?
Thanks. First off, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I've never had actually a conversation around lots of these things on a podcast. So
Oh, good.
it's been really nice to talk about some different topics and sort of get our heads in the future about thinking about some of the bigger problems in the world. So just want to appreciate you for having an amazing conversation. To find out more, you can follow me on Instagram at Akash Fagela. The best place to learn all about my all about the company and the amazing work we've done is at rntfitness.com. So www.rntfitness.com. I've also got a book, Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, that you can buy on Amazon, which underpins a lot of my methodologies and blueprints around health and fitness. And yeah, if you wanna reach out, just connect with me on Instagram, on my website, and you can see some amazing stories, read lots of articles, and hopefully start your own transformation journey.
I highly encourage it. R&T is absolutely the real deal, and I don't think to get anybody more dedicated, more insightful than Akash and really his entire team. I've had an opportunity a couple of years ago to meet you and some of your colleagues, and the work that you're doing with R&T Pro is fantastic. So all this will be linked in the show notes, as well as some of the topics and the articles that we referenced earlier. So with that has been another amazing, super insightful episode of the Alchemy of Politics with our guest Akash Fagala. I'm your host, Rusha Modi, and thank you for listening.